celluloid, and we're turning it into music and podcast for you.
All right, welcome everyone to what is the next episode, maybe your first, maybe it's the infinite, we don't know. But yet another episode of We Came From Celluloid, featuring Puma Thurman. We are parts of Puma Thurman. I am Nicky P here with my good buddy Brian Pritchard. How are we doing today, Brian?
I am wonderful. Thank you for asking that.
So we are Puma Thurman. Puma Thurman is an idea, a project, a band, nay, a spiritual exercise, perhaps, that exists at the nexus between film and music. Both big pop culture fanatics, Brian and I decided to roll all of our passions into one thing and try and make it like the Voltron of music and movies. Whether we're succeeding at that, only time will tell. But today, I thought we would start out. We had a gig last week. It was definitely an interesting gig, definitely a different type of gig. And so I actually haven't had a chance even to talk to Brian since we played. And so I thought we'd start by saying, hey, bud, how was that gig? How'd you do? What were your thoughts?
I loved the show that we played. If you saw the post I'd made ahead of it, I knew a man named Chris Waller who later became Joey Steele. Man, actually, you should probably cut that. Yeah, I don't know that I should use his real name, right? Yeah, but anyway, like I had a high school friend of mine, right, who I don't know, I spent a lot of time with him in high school and loved watching movies, and he was a huge Danzig fan. He was a huge horror movie fan. And he had an amazing minivan that he took the middle row seat out like completely. So there was just the front seat and the like way back row. And we would ride around a lot and listen to Danzig albums. And I remember he hated peanut butter and he loved Dairyman's iced tea. And I just thought the world of him. But yeah, after high school, he moved to New York, and I saw him sharing stuff of being heavily involved in like political protest stuff and heavily involved in punk music, making music. And he'd wanted to make music in the time that he was out here. He would contribute lyrics to Brian Knoll, who's in our band, right? And our first band that I was in with Brian Knoll called Drop. We had a song called Lost Monkeys, and the lyrics of Lost Monkeys were something that he had like written and contributed to the band. But he was um he was there at every practice, he was there at every show, he was right up front, he was our biggest supporter, and it was really cool to see him go out into the world. And as I've observed from afar, I think of him as this like just amazing success and somebody who, I don't know, just like never compromised who he was in a healthy way. He's been a teacher and a religious scholar, philosophy, major, right? He's a guy who thinks a lot about the world and has a lot of passions. And I enjoyed thinking about life and music and film and everything with him in high school. I've enjoyed seeing him travel the world with his projects. I enjoy seeing his passion for being a change agent in the world and being, aggressive about his principles. I don't always love that people, but I do love and admire that quality in him. It's not about always being in perfect alignment with all of it, but he strikes me as a warrior for justice. And that part has been true since I knew him as a 13-year-old onward to the present day. So I've got a 30-year history with the guy, and this was the first time we played a show together because our bands are very different, right? But he had a band drop out, and I was thrilled at the opportunity to provide some local support. We brought some people out that wouldn't have seen his band otherwise, and we got to perform for people that, realistically, I don't see why they would have ended up in one of the rooms where we were playing, necessarily, and got great feedback from those people, and it's such a thrill to I don't know, going into any show, Nick, I've said before to people this idea that, if I could just get one or two people that don't know us at all to like come up afterwards, and I love that. That to me makes like packing up the gear and going out and playing a show feel absolutely worthwhile. It's not a numbers game for me. I just like the idea when somebody who is not invested in us as people at all is just like blown away by a thing. That feels so nice. And we got that, and to get it from people half my age too, that feels like really nice feedback too, that it's just like, yeah, objectively, people heard what we did, and there were enough of them that loved it that came up and said nice things that had no reason to do so, and so that felt motivating and positive.
I'm curious. I had to be to work at like 6 in the morning the following day, and had to take off pretty early. Also a bit standoffish. How was the word? Like I had people coming up to me like, how was the other bands? I didn't talk to anybody really from the other bands after the thing. What was the word with like the other groups?
I would say that the other musicians loved it and recognized that we were serious musicians, right? And I remember a moment of just kind of cracking up, I don't even remember how it came up, but at one point when Joey was heading, his band as the headliner, I don't know, he was just sort of teasing us for practicing our instruments, you know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, right? Like I I genuinely enjoyed their show. I've told him before, I think he's an amazing front man. I think that they are a captivating band to watch, and I genuinely like the melody choices. Like I'm not just trying to blow smoke because he's a friend. Like I thought that their set was really impressive, and I've seen him perform before. Um, but yeah, his drummer coming up afterwards, and just being like, "That was amazing," Uh, there were guys from the band that played before us and the band that played afterwards, but I just remember some of the people that were in the crowd that were getting into it and that made a point of coming up afterwards. And there was a guy who, as we were packing up at the end of the night, was walking away just being like, "You were my favorite thing tonight." You know what I mean? And it's just like, thank you. That's really nice. That's really
There was that like one really skinny guy I think with long hair that was like way into it. Like I was vibing on that. He came up to me like way later in the show. I had a couple people come up to me that were like, and which by the way is a little abnormal. People don't usually come up to me at all. Um, I'm they're usually you know give me a wide berth for some reason I don't understand. I don't think I'm that unapproachable, but perhaps in that setting I just am.
I think for any band, the front man has a thing that people consider a little bit different and a little bit special. You know what I mean? I would feel the same way. Like we've seen Vola a couple times. They're not at the point in their career where they're like huge stars, especially here in the States, right? But I do not feel as comfortable approaching Asger as the front man, as I would any of the other three guys. Just somehow they feel like regular guys to me, but he feels like, no, I couldn't. He's the special man who says the words.
Yeah, and maybe it's just years of being a vocalist. I've never differentiated. Like we're all just guys in a band. Like I don't know. I don't feel any different than. anybody else. But it was definitely fun. It was I didn't burst into flame, which was a consideration after many years of being out of the punk scene and kind of going my own ways politically. Um, you know the There were some things I probably could have would have found objectionable. I was trying to make a joke about video games, and I felt like you guys were like to try and endear myself to the audience and get like a little narrative thing going. And I think you guys thought I was about to start taking it down a political run, and so you started playing a song in the middle of me talking.
To the extent that you had a moment of that perception, yeah, I have no memory of that. I probably couldn't hear anything you were saying and just wanted to keep the momentum.
Oh, my mic kept cutting out the whole gig. And that was the part of it that I was actually kind of excited about, because after years of having performed in different types of bands and different types of settings where sounding good is important. It had been a long time where it kind of didn't matter how shitty we sounded because it's par for the course, I guess. And so it was fun, where I'm just sitting there and knowing they're not hearing most of what I'm saying, but I'm just gonna scream into the microphone the same and make it look good. And it was definitely I definitely probably put more effort into the showmanship of that performance than a lot of others I've done with the band. It was certainly fun in that respect. I definitely was trying some things during Ray Ray's full service.
I wish someone had captured it. I mean, I used to be really disciplined about recording every show, just because I like the playback of it. That you have professional athletes and stuff that will review the game after the game, right? You know what I mean? You want to watch what you did, and
And I have the equipment and I prefer to do it. I just don't have the fucking time or energy anymore to set up all the cameras and the audio equipment. And it's I kind of just want to show up and play. Can I just show up and play the gig sometimes? What I'm really waiting on is my daughter to be old enough that I feel comfortable to put her in charge of that stuff. That's the real key. We're not quite there. Uh, but it was definitely a uh, a different experience. We're playing in a storefront as opposed to on a stage in a venue. You're on the same floor as everybody else. And when I was 14 and 15, all the bands I played in, that's what we did. Was it at the taco shop? Was it at the punk house where we're playing in a fucking living room? It was all very much we're all equals, we're all on the same floor. There's no pretense of a stage. And so it's just this very different kind of vibe in that setting, for sure. Um, all the bands I heard, I thought were really good at what they did. It was very, very punk, and I say that in the best possible way of subpar musicians being subpar on purpose and just playing very, very heartfelt music. It's more about the emotion and the conveyance than it is the technicality of what's getting done. And it's funny because you and me have talked, and I know your feelings about pop punk that I love musically, and it's to you it's just the most vapid shit in the world. I just hate that drum beat. That's all that music is. And it's we had this punk show, and to find a way that you vibed and appreciated it was fun for me also.
I genuinely think that Cop Out, the headliner, is a polished professional fucking act, right? I really do. I wouldn't say about them that there's anything about it that strikes me as amateur. Which again, to your point, is typically part of the what I think of as the punk vibe. Not pop punk, but true gritty punk is not supposed to be flashy. That's true, but they still feel polished and professional to me as a Manhattan-based band that tours literally the globe. They go all over Europe, all over the country, and they've done that for a long time, and so it did still to me strike me as like, oh, this is a band that performs at like a professional level. You know what I mean?
Let's not pretend that he didn't have his in-ear monitors ready and waiting to go. You know, he's showed up with his own in-ears. He's a professional. Um, but I mean, kind of talking about the whole punk thing. It's like the musicianship. It's not that this wasn't important or anything like that, but it's like there are other things that are more important, like the Ramones. Even in them, like part of the gig for them was every night going out and seeing if you could play the set faster than the last night. Like there was a professionalism in your like lack of professionalism. It's like you find the things to like raise the stakes every gig and make the show a more interesting or more different animal than the last one. But when I was in my punk years playing back in high school and stuff, like we had a song, and the goal of every night was just this one particular song. How fast could we play it and like still be understood, and really only marginally caring about that we still understood part of the song. But it was just part of the idea of like it was our fast punk, our like super fast punk song. We played as super fast as we could, and it was a lot of fun. And it's like, can we get it over in 30 seconds tonight or no? Like which one? Which one of you is dragging? You're keeping us back.
Yeah, you know, I remember when Levante relocated to Europe for a couple of years. He did that twice. The first time wasn't supposed to be permanent though. It was just supposed to be a couple of years. But in that time, we'd had material. I had material that I remember I'd brought to the band that he occasionally I'd bring something to Levante that he'd sort of just be like, nah, I'm not feeling it. And I write enough material that I was never inclined to be like precious about it. You know what I mean? But I remember that when he was gone, I took all of that material that typically speaking tended to be just kind of more on the simple and fast. And you know what I mean? It was like, I don't know, kind of throwaway songs, but that project Cul-de-sac Jones, I don't know if you've heard much of the material we did with that, but that came about and suddenly it's like instead of 6-minute songs, they were all these like tight, like 3 or 4 minute songs. And I remember having so much fun. I don't know, like somehow it like alleviated the pressure. No, you know, self-imposed pressure around trying to write as big as I had been, I guess, in a way, and just relax and have fun with it. You know, that I do remember that being a catalyst for the closest I'm probably ever going to come to that, and I'd say that carried on in what we do inside Puma Thurman. That I'm less interested than I was again at like 15, 16, listening to a lot of Metallica and stuff like that. There's this idea of trying to write songs that are like 10 minutes long and have, you know, 12 different sequences in it or something like that. You know what I mean? Like I listen to the stuff that the Buried in Me does, and I just go, no fucking thanks, man. Like I have no interest in like doing that as a musician. I appreciate a group like Polyphia that hits a sweet spot for me where it's like basic song structure, pop hooks. You know what I mean? Like they're doing a really interesting thing where it feels kind of like movie music, kind of like video game music. But it's so fucking technical in a way that blows everybody else out of the water, but they still get it done in like 3 minutes. You know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, they're hitting a real sweet spot for me.
Well, and a lot of that is that Tim actually went and sat down with producers like in LA and like learned how to write pop music, and then brought that into the fold with the band. Because even you listen to like their early stuff when he's still a kid before that move, versus the stuff that started coming out after that. Like, oh, somebody learned how to craft a pop song, and it was very clear that that's what happened. You know, he learned how to put a hook into a track, and it's always my big gripe with instrumental bands is that they noodle too much. They don't really understand that a song is still a song and it has to have a melody. And like it's always great when you see a band learn how to move past that. Like, oh, they don't have a lead vocalist, but they still got everything that you want in a song. There's still that thing that's making you focus on it. Um, and they were God he came back and had figured that out. It was so good. Well, I did want to trail back though and say it's like I know you're talking about like having a project where you can kind of like because for me, Puma Thurman is that in a lot of ways. Like when we first got together, I was very I was trying not to be silly, purposefully silly about a lot of it. And I'm trying to always do like the professional vocal take and always make it sound like whatever genre of vocal I'm trying to do on this song, always make it sound like a really good take of that particular vocal. And then, we've talked about the quote unquote Puma voice before, and a lot of that is more of me just kind of trying purposefully to be silly and like just embellish the shit out of like the way that I sing or the way that like it feels fun to sing. Like voice cracks have always that's one of the reasons I've always loved old No Doubt is because Gwen did freaking awesome vocal cracks and like just weird shifty stuff with her voice. That's why, but like they weren't R&B trills because she's doing these weird like flexy things. I don't know how you say it, but um, and this where we've kind of settled with this project has been for me interesting in that it's getting me. I'm having a lot more fun vocally, not just always trying to stretch my voice as high as it will go and just always performing at the top of my register. Or a lot of the stuff that I sing now in the band is very middle of my register. It's to me, it's not boring to sing, but it is very easy to sing in a lot of ways. Like even some of our original stuff, like I have to stretch pretty freaking hard on a day to sing some of that stuff. And it's nice to kind of not have to do that, I guess, now. It's no, I'm just gonna kind of go out and cut this. It's gonna be fun and with that.
Well, you got Weird Al, and I love Weird Al, but I'm not trying to be Weird Al. Like, so if he's on the far end of the music as a joke, sort of concept, right? Music as comedy. Then you have Tenacious D, who definitely is leaning heavy into the comedy, but there's still maybe that much more genuine emotional resonance and truth inside their stuff. You move a little bit further over to Ween, right? Is a really great example. And still not Ween, right? In terms of maybe the degree to which they were true chameleons, both as songwriters and as at a certain point, whoever was doing the production, right? It's like you managed to capture the way an 80s or 90s record like set. There was all sorts of shit going on there. But even a band like Queens of the Stone Age, even Maynard, whether it's in Tool or especially in a group like Pussifer, um, there's a sense of humor. And there's a connection to film as well, right? Where storytelling and emotional resonance is of paramount importance to me. But at a certain point, I don't want things to be deadly serious the whole fucking time. And by the way, I don't think that's true of life, right? So a movie, even a drama, a serious movie tackling serious subjects and like, if it doesn't have any fucking moments of levity, I think that's a huge mistake. And at that moment, it's harder, in fact, to relate to and feel like you're watching real human beings. I don't know. Like, I just think that w- having a little bit of a wink at inside the conversation, even when the conversation is heavy, that a deft touch, a light touch, is I don't know, spoonful of sugar, ways to say.
The band that comes to mind for me, in particular because of the vocalist, I feel like a lot of what I do is because of my love for Stephen Page from the Bare Naked Ladies. Now, I'm sure you and I probably do not feel the same about the Bare Naked Ladies, but one thing that they were experts at is that they could craft like a beautifully moving song, and then on the same record give me the King of Bedside Manor, New Kid on the Block, or fucking Box Set. Box Set is clearly an album about like Neil Diamond, a song about Neil Diamond putting out a box set and all the crap that gets thrown on the discs in there. Like, this is really me in a grade school play. Of course, I had 100,000 lines, but I forgot them. Like beautiful, beautiful, silly moments. And then like they'll give you Brian Wilson, which is this heartfelt song about a musician in his who's kind of had his best years behind him and struggling in a lot of ways. It's a very kind of dark song, but like at the same time, like there's this clown element that is always part of their character. And they went on to do like I don't know. I've never been a fan of Ed in the band. I really just like Steven and the ways at which Ed backs Steven up is good. And they went on to play a lot of crappy songs, but there's some of their stuff that will always resonate with me because of their ability to kind of walk that line with the tongue-in-cheek element of it. In the same way you were talking about Tenacious D, Tenacious D is deadly serious about the vision in their head for what those songs are. And like whenever you listen to Tenacious D, the beauty of it is them being able to trigger in your brain what they want you to hear, even though that's not what they're playing. They're two dudes on acoustic guitars. When you listen to them, you hear that metal band that they wish they were. Like they just beam it into your head because you want so much to be a part of this dream that they've created. And that's always been the beauty of that band. I think when they started getting away from the acoustics and putting out the full records, that things were not nearly as good because it's like you guys aren't the band that you want to be, and you never will be. But you were always good at making me feel like you could be. So they're ruining the illusion almost when they try to do it for real and don't quite pull it off.
No, I'm tracking you completely. That there's still this idea though for me of simple resonant frequencies, right? That I pay attention to. And I put it that way to digress for a moment. Something my dad shared with me once around the concept of like, yeah, why how can you and I hear the exact same piece of music or see the exact same film and come away with entirely different reactions? And he used this metaphor of like when you're in the shower, like if I'm in my shower and I hum a do re mi kind of scale, I don't remember which note it is, but like a certain note hits the walls of that shower and makes it vibrate. You know what I mean? And not the one after it or the one below it, but like that wall, the acoustics of that room are like most responsive to, let's say, a C sharp. You know what I mean? Like um so as a person that ends up happening to us too, and the connection to Tenacious D is that like ultimately you could strip out the lyrical content for me and the melody choices and the harmonies of their voices together and like the way Kyle writes melodies, right? I go like, oh, this dude who's on my frequency because like melody is its own story. Like to tie back to Polyphia for a moment, man, like that is the thing. Storytelling and emotional resonance. You've got a lot of these like the Steve Vais of the world, the virtuoso guitar guys. I never got down with that stuff because I felt like the only story they were telling me was I'm incredible, aren't I? Look at this. Look, aren't I fucking dazzling?
I have said for years, why will Eddie Van Halen be remembered forever and Steve Vai is always going to be niche? And it's because Eddie knew when to turn it off. Eddie knew when to swing his dick. Like he knew when the song just required da da ba 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 ba.
Well, but he was telling me a story. Even with his solos, he was telling me a greasy story that conjured up a world in your mind. You know what I mean? Again, the only one that Steve Vai, I'm not trying to totally throw him under the bus, but he's the name that comes to mind at the top of that mountain, right? Of these shredder dudes, where you're like, it felt soulless while being impressive. It didn't move my heart ever, 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 and I don't need somebody to be technically excellent. I just need them to make me feel something, you know? And it's amazing to me though, like when something does have vocals, that's the always going to be the most emotional. I love music just in its own form, and it can be incredibly emotional and it can be evocative, but the human voice and its inherent emotion and vulnerability.
Well, there's layers of crap you get to add. Like once you got the melody, oh, now we have words. Now we've got inflections. Like we've got style and technique and things that you can add to it, and it just adds a swimming pool of new stuff to a track.
And it's singular. There is a fingerprint quality, even at the moment that we could all, say, well, this person sort of sounds like this, or a combination of these two, or whatever. There is enough of that fingerprint quality that even again, when you go like, well, I've dialed in my Josh Homme has a guitar tone so singular that my daughter, when she was like 4, you know what I mean? She heard the Iggy Pop record that he played on but didn't sing on. And she was like, that's the I Had a Tail guy. Right? You know what I mean? And it was just like, yeah, you're right. It is. But even still, like you feel like guitar is guitar is guitar, even with the truth of people finding their own unique style and tone. The human voice, man, like there's people where I go to see Mars Volta in part because it's like, man, I just want to be in the room with that fucking voice. I just want to hear that voice and be in the room with it. And so even coming full circle to the idea of singers having a special, like, unapproachable air, I do feel that way. And I know musicians, I know you, like, I still sit there at band practice though, and I feel like a fan at a concert. Like, I like watching you sing at band practice. I feel like, oh yes, I'm getting to watch the Puma Thurman band. You know what I mean? Like, because I don't get and I really like that. I really like getting to watch the
full
performance.
full disclosure, folks. Nick is a diva and doesn't make it to many practices.
It makes it that much more special.
I made the joke even at the. I was very early to this gig that we played last week, and it was like literally okay. Well, they're not here yet, so I decided to take a nap in my car. And I look up as I'm sitting in front of the venue, and I'm watching everybody in the band roll equipment from like a block away past my vehicle to the door. Now, what they really should have done was tapped on it and said, "Hey, Nick, can we have the spot and we can load stuff in?" And I would have said, "Of course, guys. Yeah, I'll go find the spot. It's fine." But they didn't. And so I wake up to I'm like, this is like the best lead singer moment I've ever had. Like, I'm literally sleeping in my air conditioned vehicle as the band lugs gear from a block away. I mean, it's almost bucket list material there, Brian. Let's say that. God, I don't know that I plan to go the whole episode talking about that, but we find our tales of a place we find them. I was actually gonna bring up, hey, we have one record actually in a studio being mixed right now, but I guess we have to wait until another day to get talking about that.
Yeah, and I one thing I'd thought about before this conversation that we can also save for a future call. You get small hints of it, but you've never been to my house. I don't think. Well, maybe you have, but I don't know that you've been up here. You've been here, I think, to practice once or twice.
I have been to your living room a couple times.
Yeah, in the basement. Yeah, like for acoustic sessions. But yeah,
I've never been in your basement. I've never actually been past your living room, Brian. I've walked into your living room maybe a handful of times and never made it past that. I may have used your restroom once.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's not going to change, but I'll show you a tour. I'll show you a tour at least.
Unless he said show me a tour, he clearly has a video for guests. He didn't say take me on a tour, folks. Anyways, what are we thinking about next week? What's next week's episode going to be? You think?
Boy, I don't know. Yeah, again, like, I saw Superman 3 times over the weekend. Since I saw you last, I'm always watching shit.
You really went 3 times. Was that good, huh?
Yeah, well, I don't mean to sell it that way. You know what I mean? The 3 times was more about I just I have the movie passes, and Connor really wanted to go with his brother, and then James wanted to go on his birthday, and then my son wanted to go with his girlfriend, and the IMAX shit's really expensive, and so I did 3 separate things with passes rather than trying to like lump that all in. So yeah.
Well, maybe we could talk about that train wreck. I'm not saying a train wreck, folks. I've
Oh,
heard
you saw?
nothing but things. Oh God, no. No,
Mm.
because remember, I'm not a superheroes fan. I'm
Sure.
waiting for the Lobo movie when it happens.
Well, that's fair. Well, no, I thought it was great. We can talk about it.
So, anyways,
I am fully prepared to proudly defend James Gunn's Superman film, sir.
the thing is that I'm in large part I'm a James Gunn fanboy, so I can't imagine myself not liking it. I just don't particularly like Superman.
Yeah, but fuck the internet and their stupid feedback. So
All right, folks, we'll see you next week.
I say that as we create internet content. Fuck the internet.
We came from celluloid, and we're turning it into